everybody, and welcome back to the WTF1 podcast, ABCDEF1 full season edition. Yes, we did mid-season. We filled that gap, and now we're going to fill the Christmas gap with our full ABCDEF1 driver rating video. So this is essentially where we go from 20th, Nicholas Latifi, all the way to first. Big shout out to TuneFix2, who has put together all these stats from our podcast and has done so for quite a few years, to be fair. So big shout out to them. Thank you so much. And before we get into it, as always, in our podcasts, we have a 5-star review that we want to read out. And this one's from Marnavi in the United States of America. Why, Tommy, do you write it like that? Why can't you just put the USA? Anyway, they said, love this show. This is one of the only podcasts that I actually regularly check for new episodes. I'm pretty sure you can get a notification button or something that might help you. But thank you very much for checking anyway. I'm a relatively new F1 fan, and this podcast has taught me so much about this sport. Don't know how it's done that with all the washed opinions we have. Matt, Katie, and Tommy. They didn't say that part. Matt, Katie, and Tommy are super fun, and I can listen to them for hours on end. Great job, guys, and eagerly waiting for the 2023 content. That makes my heart very warm. Thank you so much, Martin V. Now, I don't know if you've written it like that, Tommy, so that I pronounce it that way, or is that actually their name with the dashes as well?
That's how it was written.
Okay, perfect.
As was United States of America. So,
ooh, little snap back there.
Yeah, here we go. Look, Tommy's sassy. It's the end of the year. He's tired. I like it. We are also live streaming on Twitch, and I've just seen the amount raised. So we are doing a shoey every £500 that are raised. And we've been streaming for a short while, and we are nearly at our second shoey. We need £10 in order for that to happen. And I thought, look, we'll do it on the podcast because we're not going to cut that content out. People want to see it. We're raising money for on Just Giving for Blood Cancer UK. It was a very close cause for us. Tommy, you've got someone that's close to you, your uncle that's just been recently diagnosed with blood cancer, and also Glenn, who works on with our sister company, The Race, and he has also experienced this very difficult time, and thankfully, due to the charity, they've been able to help and save a lot of people. So we're raising money for them, and if I refresh it right now, is it 1,000? It's 1,003.
£1,003.
Right. Who does the shoey?
And can I also add in that lovely Glenn, who you would have seen at the beginning in the video, has actually put in our Slack chat, the amount of money that the stream is raising is already incredible, and like a little smile with a tear. So it really does mean a lot to Glenn awesome. And all of us at The Race Media. It's an amazing amount of money.
Yeah,
it's amazing, for such a tightly little knit community that we have, and you guys watching is it's very, very special. So thank you. Right, so I put the poll up, 1 minute poll, go and vote. That's incredible. You've gone from having 8% of the vote, Tommy, to 57%.
The first vote, I was nowhere.
You should never trust Twitch chat.
No. Right, I'll go get
wow.
beer and a shoe.
Oh, it's just froth.
It's just froth, yeah.
Oh,
it's froth.
A big lump of knobs, it's got the juice, the juice.
I can't imagine a wonderful thing. Oh, that looks yummy.
Sebastian Vettel foot juice.
Let's take a quick look at our sponsor for this video, Surfshark VPN. When you're chilling out and wanting to watch something, you surely want more content, right? Well, you can access more shows on places like Netflix or other streaming services that aren't available in the UK. Plus, your internet experience doesn't have to change when you go traveling. With a VPN, you can stay secure during your journeys and use the internet as you would back home. Speaking of the word secure, free public Wi-Fi can be the absolute dream when you don't have any mobile data, but it's also a blessing for hackers. It's always better to use a VPN when connecting to public Wi-Fi hotspots to keep those hackers at bay. It's also got an ad and malware blocker, cookie pop-up blocker, two-factor authentication, and 24/7 support. It's safe to say you have your own bodyguard service with Surfshark VPN. Surfshark are currently offering a special deal for the holiday period. The offer is increasing from 83% off to 85% off and 3 extra months free. Go to surfshark.deals/WTF1 and use the code WTF1RACE at checkout.
Did that play?
Saucy. I like it. Yeah.
It was short, sweet.
Just short, sweet, to the point.
Short, sweet. Could tell he didn't want to do any more than that. And well, thanks so much, Tommy, for taking part. That was. I feel like we are live on Twitch, and I think they'll be asking for the full song of that. And I feel like it's like cop out. What do you think, Katie?
Oh wow.
I'm
Thanks.
joking. It was great.
I think it was okay.
It was great, but I just wanted
Next
more.
time you have
That's
to do a
the problem.
remix version of it.
A remix.
keep-
That
I'll
was very
remix
good.
it for you.
Okay.
That'll
You
be my
will.
contribution.
Okay, let's start from P20, shall we? It will come to absolutely no one's surprise to know that the GOAT, Nicholas Latifi, slots in P20. This man achieved 8 Fs, 6 Es, 4 Ds, 2 Cs, 1 B, 0 A, and 1 A star from Japan on his way to P20. Of course, Japan. How can we forget? What an incredible performance from him in the wet. And I'm not even being sarcastic. I don't know where that Nicholas Latifi went or where he came from. But he was consistently bad through most of the season.
Oh, I mean, it's
Well,
not
I'm
a
sorry,
lie.
if we
It's not
can't
a
say
lie.
this for 20th, when can we?
It's true, but he does love his Nutella,
Oh
and I feel like I
my
had to get
God.
that in one last time. But yeah, it wasn't Latifi's season. Has it ever been Latifi's season? No, but it was still.
Oh, I'm going to be nice. Also, Katie.
Yeah, at least it's literally like the Bart Simpson cake thing of like, at least you tried. He seems like a lovely lad, but as we all know, nice guys finish last.
Wow.
And
Boy, did he finish last.
I wish him all the best in his next adventure as CEO of Nutella, or whatever else he's going to do. Maybe IndyCar, but I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah. Well done on being lovely.
A few people. That is one of the most sarcastic.
Yeah, that is.
But I'm not being
really-
sarcastic because he does seem nice.
I know he is lovely, but it's just the way it was delivered. Chat is actually properly popping off at the fact that he only got 8 Fs. Let's just like basically clarify that Fs mean an absolutely horrible performance.
Yeah.
We're talking 2 laps down kind of vibe.
Yeah, which he did a fair bit. So
Katie,
yeah.
was you
I
were you trying
can't-
to
I can't get in
stroke Latifi, or
focus.
what was going on there? Oh, there we go. Yeah, you're a bit
Hey! Oh, there you
wonderful.
go.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry, audio listeners. I was
Yeah,
out of focus.
Latifi's last few grades of what will be his F1 career since Belgium were F, 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 A star, E, F, F, and E. So yeah, I think it got to the point where we were just fed up of him just being pretty poor, to be honest. And it's a shame because, yeah, I mean, his confidence was shot after last season, and I'd argue he was worse than he's ever been this season and never really recovered. He was actually so far clear in 20th that if his last, I think, 4 grades had been A stars, he'd have still finished 20th. That's how bad it was.
Bubba.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense when I look at 19th, who had 0 Fs.
Yeah.
So I can see why. Yeah, it's not gone well, has it? Did you say "oh Bubba"? By the way, have I just? Yeah, no. Katie's she's put those antlers on, and she's just.
He's not had a shoey yet.
I know.
She's not.
I've only had 2. Oh gosh.
Yes, we've done 2 shoeys so far in this live stream we're doing on Twitch, raising money for Blood Cancer UK. Third one soon to come, and we're hoping it's going to be Katie because I've done one and Tommy has also done one. Right, 20th is done and dusted. I don't think there's any kind of like regrets there. It was absolutely necessary. We move on to 19th, and in that place, unfortunately for him, I think he was there in the mid-season as well. Is Mick Schumacher, P19. 0 Fs, which I find hard to believe. 5 Es, 7 D, 5 C, 3 B, 1 A, and 1 A star, which was Austria.
How did he not get an F? Sorry. That's crazy. Like, he literally didn't race in Saudi because he'd smashed his car up.
Yeah,
Maybe we
I'm
just
really
had
surprised.
sympathy.
I'm surprised he didn't get an F for the amount of times that he obliterated his car.
Yeah, maybe it's the Schumacher name. I didn't want to give it. I was like, no, E.
Yeah,
E
there's
will
some
do.
Matt influence there. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then
to
you
give
got
it an
Katie's
F, and
bit
you're like,
lenient as well.
probably a C. Yeah.
Well, yeah, look, he's not the one actually rebuilding the car, is he? I mean, come on, like, geez.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe we're a little bit lenient, but still, he finished 19th and would have stayed 19th even if he had an extra F. So, yeah, Mick, he's lost his seat. He's going to Mercedes reserve next year, which I think is quite a good move for him personally. It'll allow him to at least learn from, a very, I was going to say he was with Ferrari previously, but it seemed like that relationship wasn't particularly good or efficient between the two of them. Whereas, he's following his dad's footsteps kind of thing, going to Mercedes, and I'm sure they will try and nurture him where they can. Whether he'll be able to get a seat or it'll be kind of like a Stoffel Van Dorn kind of vibe. We'll wait and see. But I think, yeah, Mick will struggle to get back on the grid, at least in a car that isn't the slowest.
Yeah, not a great season for Mick. There was a lot of thought that, it might be, it's his second season. He needs a season to warm up, was the big thing that a lot of people said ahead of the season. And it's like something that's happened in his career a lot. But it just didn't really happen. And it wasn't like Haas were the same position as what they were last year, where they literally couldn't do anything. There were chances, and it was a long way into the season. I can't remember exactly when he scored his first point. Was it Austria or was it Silverstone? Silverstone, yeah. Where he hadn't scored a point yet. And looking at what, Kevin Magnussen had done in that Haas when he'd put it, he was running up in like fifth or whatever in Bahrain. Like, Mick should have got a point at the start of the season and didn't. And it's a shame, but I think 19th is fair.
Yeah, I think this is the right place for Mick. Actually, thinking about it, it is nice that every driver on the grid so far, well, like on the grid just generally in 2022, I think everybody had a good moment. Like, obviously, Latifi in Japan, Mick also got those points in Silverstone. It was really competitive in the Austrian sprint. And that's why he got his A-star from the Austria weekend. So there were some highs, but as you sort of said, like a lot of lows and a lot of expensive crashes. He did, unfortunately, also have quite a few shunts last season. But with Mazepin as his teammate, I think Mazepin took a lot of the heat off of him. So it's not like he's just come into these new regulations and he hasn't got to grips with the car and keeps crashing it, because we have seen some of that in 2021 as well. But yeah, I think that unfortunately he just didn't do enough to warrant his Haas seat being left for him. And yeah, wish him all the best at Mercedes.
Absolutely. Haas said that they can't afford to learn with a driver. They need a driver that can just be slotted in and make the most of the car. And Mick, just isn't at that stage of his career where you can rely on him to just hit the ground running and not have that sort of learning period. So yeah, Mick wasn't the best fit for Haas, who are a struggling team that need to score as many points as possible, hence why they've gone for Nico Hülkenberg. And we'll see what the future holds for Mick Schumacher. In 18th position, Daniel Ricciardo. He had 2 Fs in USA and Brazil, 2 Es, 5 Ds, 5 Cs, 5 Bs, 3 As, 0 A stars. So, Katie, you were saying about big moments that they've had, big standout moments. Danny Rick.
Mexico, baby.
Yeah, I think Danny Ricks was Mexico, but he didn't quite get that A-star because he punted Yuki, didn't he? Otherwise, he probably would have got the A-star. But
because I feel like
strong Singapore as well.
That strat in Mexico, I don't want to hate too much.
No,
but
it flattered him.
It did. I mean, the fact that Danny Rick was flying through the field, you knew something was up. You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those like, okay, that strategy real good, huh? And that's why George Russell should have done the same strategy, because he might have won, but he did not. George 63 Russell was in the chat as well. Hello, live on Twitch. Not probably the real George, but Danny Rick, 18th.
How times have changed, eh?
I mean,
it's
we can't be surprised, can we? I mean, the bottom 3 in our ABCDEF1 rankings have all lost their seat. So
that's so true.
People say we're washed and we don't know anything. Take a look at our ratings, huh?
No, but I mean, if you think about a few years ago when Daniel Ricciardo was at Red Bull, well, he still is now, if you want to be like that, but he was making the decision whether he should stay, whether he should go. It's not really worked out well for him, has it? Like, obviously his Renault days, there are 2 podiums in there, and then went to McLaren and thought, oh, this could be it. But it's just not really worked out for him. I'm really glad that he's actually going to take a sabbatical in theory. He's, I think, second on the list of all, like, the amount of consecutive race starts that any driver has had. The only driver that had more was Hamilton, and that had to come to an end when he got COVID and had to miss the race at Sakir. So the guy's been racing consistently in F1 since 2011. And maybe, he's kind of just thought, I need some time away. Everybody is allowed to take some time for their mental health, even athletes at the top of their game. And so I hope that this time back at home maybe gives him a chance for some reflection. He might decide, actually, I do want to stay away. I don't want to come back. Or he might do an Alonso and realize that from that time away, this is what he needs to do differently. This is what he can improve on. And he'll come back in 24 and he'll be the honey badger we all know and love. But yeah, for now, not the season any fan, I think I can say any F1 fan really wanted to see him have, because everybody's got a piece of their heart is that it's especially reserved for Daniel Ricciardo. So this is a tough one, but that's how it is. It's a competition at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's shocking year for Danny Rick. I mean, he had going back to the last season before this one, he didn't put in particularly great performances and then had that win at Monza, but then you were still like, that was kind of a, dare I say, a bit of a, he was in the right place at the right time. He still obviously did brilliantly to get that win, but there was no other real standout performances. And you went into the season thinking, right, this is where he really needs to step up now and at least be on the pace for Lando, but it couldn't have really gone any worse for him. And it's going to be fascinating really next year to see Piastri in that McLaren, and we'll get a bit more of an idea of, was it Lando being brilliant? Was it Daniel Ricciardo being terrible? How good really is the McLaren? We'll find out. But yeah, a very poor year from Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, Piastri's not going to have a Danny Rick year. You can clip me up and store it in your locker. Oscar Piastri will not be as bad as what Danny Rick was this year in comparison to his teammate. That's my opinion anyway. Okay, in 17th position, Tommy, close your ears. Yuki Tsunoda.
Oh.
Yeah, not a great season for Yuki. I think that some of it he was hamstrung by what the AlphaTauri could actually do on race weekends, as Tommy peers over to look at something, just to make sure that the results are indeed accurate. Maybe that's what he was trying to work out. But Yuki had 0 Fs, 4 Es. I don't know how the hell did he have 0 Fs when he was 2 laps down in Hungary. What is wrong with us? Like, he was
Great question.
3 light years behind everyone else, and we've got a 0. What is wrong? Tommy, did you influence this?
I reckon
Probably.
I did, yeah,
you were
probably.
like, oh no, actually,
it was good in qualifying.
Yeah, probably
beat Gasly in qualifying, and I was like, hey, stuff.
So you got 0 Fs, 4 Es, 5 Ds, 3 Cs, 7 Bs, 2 As, and no A stars. Thing is, right, I don't think 17th really does it justice as to comparatively to his teammate. I don't think he was that bad. So I feel like 17th is a bit harsh overall.
It's a weird one because I think he's just too inconsistent. That's his problem. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, when we did the mid-season ones, he didn't get a single C. We're talking about from what I remember.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, that he only got Bs where we're like, oh, actually, Yuki's doing a lot better. And then he'd have an absolute stinker of a race where we give him a D or an E. And yeah, I mean, for a midfield driver, we give out a lot of Cs to the midfield because a lot of the time, you don't see them one bit. And it's sometimes quite hard to grade them. So for a driver in the midfield to only get 3 Cs and have a lot more Bs and Ds and Es than just kind of a average grade, I think that's Yuki's problem. Is he's not consistent. He's been a lot closer to Gasly, which is just a shame because the car's not been there. So you can't really, when he has been better than Gasly, it's like, oh, he's finished 12th. Whereas if he'd been quicker than Gasly last year, he'd be getting like 6s and 7s, and we'd probably be giving him a lot higher grades. So, but he just still has those odd moments, doesn't he? As much as it pains me to say it, where he'll just like a Hungary or whatever, where he just does something a bit silly.
Well, like Silverstone is a prime example. Like I was sat in the grandstands watching this when the two AlphaTauris came together and collected each other, and you could see that was going to happen from a mile away. And Yuki got the blame for that one. So yeah, it's a difficult one because the car hasn't been up to the standard that I think a lot of fans really hope for this year, because there was so much potential last year, and it's just not really worked itself out in the new regulations. But like you say, Tommy, it's been a very inconsistent season for him. And yeah, I guess if I was to point out like where I think he'd be, I'd probably put like 15th, 16th. But once we go through the others, I'm sure actually 17th will make itself like it make more sense that he's there. So
it's pretty close between, to be fair, between like 17th to 14th, that a few grades here and there would change things. So I think that's probably why he's down in 17th. But yeah, it's the inconsistency that's hurt him.
In 16th, Lance Stroll. He had 1 F in the USA, 2 Es, 4 Ds, 8 Cs, 5 Bs, 1 A, and 1 A star at Singapore. It was a season for Lance Stroll, wasn't it? I mean, that's about as far as I can go.
Yeah,
when
he drove a car.
He drove a car. His dad owns the team. He's really not like, at least before he had moments of
like podiums,
what people
poles,
could argue was brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, he did have the odd podium and, as you say, pole position at Turkey and what like that, stuff like that. When you go, oh, okay, Lance is actually really good, and I'm sure he is. I just don't feel like he has the sort of fire within him to actually take that next step. And fair enough, I think we've said this before, like, fair enough, he doesn't feel that way because at the end of the day, his seat is never at risk whilst his dad owns the team. So there isn't that need to go that extra few percent. He can just turn up to a Grand Prix race, do a mediocre job, and turn up next race next year. So yeah, it was just a very mediocre season, actually probably below mediocre for Lance Stroll, really, because we know that there is potential there. It just wasn't really shown.
Well, as I've said, and I'll try and give an example every single time, but my moment of the season for Lance Stroll was that start at the Japanese Grand Prix. Honestly, I still think about that now. The fact that he spotted the dry line down the right-hand side there and then absolutely floored it and made up like a gazillion positions officially. But it was an amazing bit of like actual common sense and like proper racecraft from Lance. So like you say, the potential is there. And with Singapore, the race beforehand, he got 6th place there, which is why he got the A star. And that's like a really good result. I mean, if we had Sebastian Vettel coming in 6th, we'd probably be like rolling out a red carpet, fanfares, you know, party poppers, all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that, you know, Lance did get a chance to get a good result. But then he also has moments where he's a bit of a dum-dum. USA, perfect example. We're using dum-dum as an official piece of vocabulary for this.
Yeah.
And then same in Brazil when he managed to push Seb off the track. So I don't know. I feel like this has maybe been... How was his season last year? Because I feel like these 2 years at Aston Martin have probably been his weakest, even
fairly
aside
similar,
from like the random podium here and there when he was at Racing Point. But yeah,
he's always been about bottom of the midfield kind of in our ratings, because again, I think he's one that maybe has a bit of inconsistency where sometimes he'll be a bit I feel like Lance Stroll more than ever this year has either done something really stupid and been a bit rubbish and he'll get a really low grade, and also his qualifying has been abysmal, and then out of nowhere he gets to the final lap and he's 8th, and you're like, what is going on? And that's kind of happened at the end of the season. I mean, looking at those races you mentioned, I mean, Monza he got a D, then in the next race he got an A star at Singapore. Japan he did that great start and got a C, and in the next race in America he got an F. So he's flip-flopping all over the place, and I think that is part of it, that we might never see that relentless consistency that we see from the top drivers and better drivers, because at the end of the day, you can yeet Fernando Alonso into a barrier and do something really stupid, and it's like, oh no, anyway, he's my teammate next year, and it's all good. because my dad's never going to fire me.
Exactly. His defensive driving and general awareness this year was absolutely diabolical. Like it was just a genuine.
It feels forever ago now that it was this year, wasn't it, where we had the discussion about the whole mirrors thing, where because he was getting a lot
was
of.
Was that last year with Brazil?
No, I think it was this. I think it was this year in Saudi because he got.
Yeah, it was
Albon got a penalty, and it's like while people dive bomb on him, he does still kind of go, "I'm not even gonna." It's like AI in a racing game where you never leave the racing line, and you have to have a little bit of awareness of you can't just turn into a corner and pretend someone's not there. So, yeah. Not good.
Australia with Latifi as well, chat have been saying. So
yeah, of course. God, that feels forever ago.
Doesn't it?
When those two collided. It's like, mad.
Feels like a different year, that does. But
that does.
Thank you, chat, for getting involved with that. But yeah, Lance Stroll just, not great. And you know for a fact Alonso is blowing up so much more if he wasn't teammates with him next year over USA. In 15th position, we have Kevin Magnussen. He managed to tot up 0 Fs, 2 Es, 7 Ds, 5 Cs, 4 Bs, 3 As, and 1 A star in Bahrain. K-Mag's season. I mean, I was going to say a tale of two halves, but I don't think it quite splits down the middle in terms of good and bad. The start was incredible. K-Mag rocking up off of his sofa, basically, and just banging in great results in a car that Haas had produced, which was really good. But of course, they couldn't upgrade anything because they had about 3 pennies left in the bank. But he was great at the start of the year. We were all gassing him up. But then when you look at his grades, he's got 7 Ds and 2 Es in there. And that's a lot of Ds. I think that might be the most Ds of any driver. That's including Nicholas Latifi there. Yeah, Ds. Oh, no, actually, no, to be fair, Mick Schumacher also had 7 Ds. So both Haas drivers had 7 Ds. You're right there, Katie.
I'm absolutely fine.
It's literally like a try not to laugh challenge for Katie every time the D grade's mentioned.
I promise I am grown up. So K-Mag, am I surprised to see him in 15th? Yes, probably after when we were at the first half of the season. But just Haas, just with a car that wasn't very good, couldn't produce any results, so didn't deserve anything higher than a C or a D.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Magnussen, is there anything more Kevin Magnussen than him finishing as the 15th best driver when he got a pole position in a Haas and also had that unbelievable race at the start of the season? It just shows, again, his inconsistency as a driver. Unbelievable highs, like the pole position, like I said, and that race in Bahrain, but collecting meatball flags like crazy during the season and just having those moments, particularly at the start of the year, I think for me was the most where they needed to get as many points as they could when that car was good. And why Magnussen needed to race. I know, I love drivers like him, but from taking away the kind of enjoyment as a fan and what Haas actually want, why he needs to, be going wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton when he's definitely not going to be racing him in the race, and just pick up 8th, 9th, 7th or whatever and just bag some solid points. And that's unfortunately what Magnussen didn't do enough. And Haas really should have finished higher in the constructors. And while Mick was deservedly 19th and not good, it's not all Mick. I don't think either driver got enough points that they should do. And I think if you'd have gone in that first race and told me that Kevin Magnussen would be voting him the 15th best driver of the year, I think we'd all be shocked, because it was like, wow, what a comeback. Magnussen, driver of the day in the first race, unbelievable scenes, but just too inconsistent.
Yeah, it is a real shame. Like, looking at the season as a whole, those first, the first 4 races, 3 out of those, he got points, back-to-back points in Bahrain and Saudi. Bahrain getting that 5th place, Saudi in 9th place. Australia got 14th. For some reason, Australia and Haas always seems to be a really unfortunate combination. And then we went to Imola and he qualified really well. And then that kind of got pushed back a bit with the sprint, but still managed to finish 9th in the race. And you think, oh my goodness, like this is great. We've got K-Mag who's just on absolute fire because he's been thrown into this situation last minute and he's just thriving off of it. And this is amazing. And then sort of reality setting. And like you say, with Miami, it's like 16th, Spain 17th, Monaco and Azerbaijan, retirement, Canada 17th. There are a few more little chances where he got points, Silverstone in Austria, just like Mick did. But like you say, it started off at such a strong like way at the start of the season and it kind of just fell apart a bit. And I don't know if I would put him 15th on the list. I mean, he finished 13th overall in the season, so maybe I'd push him a little bit higher because of that. But I don't know, perhaps that initial excitement and I don't know, like willingness to really push himself to the absolute limit and make the most of the opportunity just begun to wear off, just as you kind of would expect it to. I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know, when you start a new job or something and you're really super eager to like do everything, you're helping make all of the teas at the start of the day and you're like, oh, does anybody want me to get something when I go out for lunch or whatever? And you're like super keen. And then by week 4, you're like, oh, can somebody make me a cuppa? You know, that kind of thing. Or is that just me?
What you're
Trust you to
K-Mag?
turn it about tea.
Yeah. KT loves tea. And also, are you suggesting that K-Mag is turning up after 4 races and going, you know what, the motivation has waned now. I'm just here for the paycheck.
I'm here for a cup of tea.
Or he got too big for his boots, which is what we were saying about with Hamilton and the whole like, well, have you seen my results, Lewis? I'm going to try and fight you around this corner. Oh no, we crashed.
I think that's just K-Mag, isn't it?
It's just K-Mag being K-Mag.
Yeah, he's just.
I love him for it though. I think it's funny.
Crazy.
Absolutely.
There you go then. K-Mag P15. Congratulations. Kind of. 14th goes to Zhou Guanyu. 0 Fs, 1 E, 4 Ds, 12 Cs, 1 B, 4 As, no A stars. I felt like Zhou Guanyu didn't finish half the season, to be honest with you, with the amount of reliability problems he had and whatnot. But he did have his moments of brilliance. He had his moments of out-qualifying Bottas, which then made him as good as Lewis Hamilton, if you really kind of get the comparisons out, because Bottas is a wonderful qualifier. So. Yeah, I think Zhou Guanyu, decent. It would have been nice to have seen how much better he could have done in the Drivers' Championship and whatnot if he'd actually finished races or not had things go on with his car, which meant he was then 30 seconds off the back of the field, or terrible starts because it made him lose 5 positions because something didn't go into the right setting, which I'm still convinced maybe sometimes it was just him being a rookie and pressing the wrong thing or whatever, because, you know, you never know. Like it might be there are many buttons on a steering wheel. It could easily just done a Latifi and just turned right down the wrong layout at Japan.
Maybe more, maybe less.
Thank you, Katie. And you can do the whole thing, or
no? I don't know. That's about as much as I know.
But yeah, of course, he's. I'd say he deserved to not lose his seat, but at the same time, I think he needs to show that those ounces of potential that we saw more often next year.
Yeah, I really am glad that Zhou has been able to silence a lot of criticism that he got when he was announced at that Alfa Romeo team. I know, actually, Tommy, you did a tweet or something saying it's not like he's, what did you say, like driving a bin lorry or something, and he liked it. Man.
Yeah, people acted like he literally hadn't done F2 and was just a pay driver where they just picked someone off the street and gone, you've got loads of money, drive a Formula One car. And not actually a Formula 2 race winner. People just like really did hammer that whole pay driver grade on him.
So I'm glad in many ways that he was able to silence a lot of people, and that we've actually been able to see his personality come out a lot more this year, and his sense of fashion. I don't know if that's like just a girly thing to say, but that man has got some insane drip.
Some drip.
So yeah.
Serious
drip. But yeah, unfortunately he had a car underneath him which was like just unbelievably unreliable. It was crazy. Like you say, if he wasn't conking out at the side of the racetrack, there was something wrong with the gearbox, or they were having real difficulties at the start getting their starts ready and good and things like that. So he's been hampered with a lot of technical problems with his machine, but generally, I think not a bad rookie year. Points on debut can never go down as a bad thing either. So
yeah, I think those points on debut showed that when his car was actually working at the start of the season, he could get decent results. Unfortunately, just more often than not, when that Alpha was good, it was just terrible. Like his car just broke down all the time. Like you
when
were
the
saying,
Alpha was good, it was terrible.
Well, terrible reliability. Sorry. And yeah, if you look at his season, I think the perfect way to describe it is just solid. Like he wasn't the best rookie we've ever seen in Formula One, but if you compare him to the rookies that we had last year who were smashing up the car a lot, and that pains me to say as a Yuki fanboy, but Mick Mazepin and Yuki, he's done what he needed to do in terms of just getting good finishes and staying out of trouble and just proving that he deserves to be in Formula One, which I think he absolutely did, and deserves to be in F1 next year. And I just hope Alpha deliver a better car so we can see a bit more of what he can do.
Yes, and a more reliable car at that as well. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? Okay, 13th position goes to Pierre Gasly. Not where he probably wanted to finish in the ABCD F1 driver ratings, and probably, I'm going to just say on a whim, the driver to have gone the furthest down since last year in terms of ratings and gradings that we've given, and partly because of the car, but partly also because maybe Gasly just didn't have as good of a season. But he totted up 0 Fs, 1 E, 6 Ds, 8 Cs, 3 Bs, 2 As, and 2 A stars, which were at Baku and Belgium. I just felt like it was a very anonymous season from Gasly compared to 2021, where he was the front and center of incredible in qualifying. Yes, AlphaTauri did some stupid strategies which ruined his race last year and whatnot, but this year, I don't know. It just seemed like it went off the ball a bit. Of course, AlphaTauri literally finished 9th, did they not? Like, that is
shocking.
Outrageous.
Absolutely shocking.
You started shaking your head. I was like, "Am I right?"
Sorry, I was shaking my head of disappointment,
Tommy is trying
and then
to
I
sell me
realized
down
that
the river in this podcast. I swear to God, like he's saying all kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, to finish 13th in the ABCD F1 driver ratings, but 9th in the constructors, he's done well. Well done, Pierre.
I think he should be lower than this.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's this high up, to be fair. I mean, it's one of those things where I guess you can argue that when the car was good, to be honest, this may be wrong, but I feel like AlphaTauri only really had one race where that car was any good, and it was Baku, and Gasly delivered, Tsunoda delivered until his rear wing decided to just disintegrate. So a lot of it comes down to the car, but I think the reason Gasly is low down on the list as well is that after Yuki, I feel like Yuki more often than not was beating him in qualifying a lot more than I expected. And it feels like at the end of the year, Gasly, who was so good in qualifying, ended up just being terrible and constantly going out in Q1.
We gave Gasly an A star for a pit lane start Spa and finished 9th. I feel like, I don't know, maybe we were a little bit I don't know. Is that
maybe it was so long since a good result? We were like,
give him an A star.
Yeah, that's probably me, to be fair. I thought if I was going to put Pierre, this is what's so stupid. If I was going to put Pierre anyway, it's literally based on our results. So, but I think he should probably be like 15th or something. I would push him way back. And Matt, you kind of said that Pierre had a bit of an anonymous season, but the one place that he wasn't anonymous was in the steward's office, as he picked up 10 penalty points this year, which has happened before, but is the most that people have got in a pretty long time. So take that like with maybe a pinch of salt.
That's another reason why he should be lower, I think, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that, because he's really tried to push the whole narrative of like, penalty points are terrible. It's like, don't get them then.
Well,
like, stop
Lewis Hamilton
having
didn't get any.
silly.
Carlos Sainz didn't get any.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it's
I don't
possible. Bottas
understand
didn't get any.
why. I don't understand why now Gasly's on 10 and really close to a race ban. There's all this talk of like, should the penalty point system change? It's like, no, the whole point is you get banned if you keep doing things like that. Like, don't implement that system if you're just going to change it as soon as someone gets near a race ban.
And his penalty points don't expire for a little while as well.
A
Till
long
May.
time.
So he's got to go a long way before he. And we then wonder, will they actually execute a race ban, and will they give lenient points from here until May? We will have to wait and see.
Penalized him in, I want to say maybe it was Mexico or somewhere, and I think it was like Alex Albon had previously had the same offense and got 2 penalty points, but he only got 1 for it. I'm not trying to say that there's a conspiracy there, but I'm just saying it wasn't consistent.
There's a conspiracy.
There's a conspiracy, yeah.
But I think they'll be careful not to give him 1.
Interesting stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, Pierre Gasly, not a good season
Good luck
for
at
him.
Alpine.
Yes, we did wonder if he was going to just tot up another couple and miss Abu Dhabi, didn't we? But he did not execute that plan either. So there you go. 13th for Pierre Gasly. In 12th position, Alex Albon. He got the grades of 0 Fs, 1 E, 4 Ds, 6 Cs, 7 Bs, 1 A, and 2 A stars in Australia and Spa. I felt like Alex Albon had a pretty decent season considering he was in a Williams. He had some standout performances, as mentioned in those grades in Australia and Spa, and you have to wonder whether he would have got another A star at Monza, considering what De Vries was able to do in his car and when he was unwell. But yeah, I think it's difficult to obviously really judge Alex Albon's performances and how good they are, but when he has a teammate like Nicholas Latifi, unfortunately, I know it's Latifi slander, and I'm sorry, Nutella, etc. But it is hard to compare because we know that Latifi is not on the level of Alex Albon. So, but that aside, Alex had some very good races, and I think he's slowly but surely sort of building back up that reputation that he is a decent midfield runner and deserves a better seat than Williams. And I hope for his sake that he can build upon it next year. I'm still a bit hesitant. I don't think Williams will be any good next year either, personally, but we'll see.
I'm really proud of Alex this year. I mean, I was certainly somebody criticizing him fairly when he was coming to the end of his time at Red Bull. And we sort of knew that seat might be up for grabs, and eventually Perez took it. So to take a year out is never an easy thing anyway, but then to come back with a team which everybody sort of says, oh, Williams at the back, they're rubbish, all this kind of thing. But to make your comeback and actually have a successful comeback, and some of his performances and Williams' performances this year, I was really, really impressed by. I mean, we gave him an A star for Australia. The man did seemingly the impossible by going the entire race distance, apart from the last lap where he had to take a mandatory pit stop, on the same set of hard tyres. Like, that's absolutely phenomenal that he managed to do that. And that's a story that I feel like hasn't really been given enough attention for the year, because that was really, really great. And yeah, there have been lots of moments from this year with Alex where I think actually this has been a really good thing for him to come back into F1, and he's not sort of let the fact that he's come back with Williams ruin his experience or taint his experience. He's sort of taken it for what it is and delivered that team some really solid results over the year. So I think that he, away from this ABCDEF1 thing, is one of my stars of the season.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Stars of the season.
Yeah, he's been maybe a little underrated in terms of what he's done. It's really hard to judge, though, isn't it? A bit like, I guess we'll go into it later, but like a Lando, where it's like, how much of it is that their teammate has just been really bad? Because Alex, in my opinion, has beaten Latifi a lot more. Like, it's been clear of Latifi more than George Russell was, but he's perhaps not had the highs that George Russell had at Williams, where he was in the points a lot or doing things like that. But yeah, Alex has had a good season, and it's funny you mentioned, Matt, that about in Italy. It's a shame that he actually missed that race, because that was the track for Williams. And we saw what De Vries could do. You'd assume that Alex might have done the same, if not even better. We give him an A star, and he'd actually end up 10th in this list. So he's had a good season, and like you, Katie, like we criticized him quite a lot, and I think we even, which it seems ridiculous now to even suggest it, but I'm sure we had conversations of like, wow, if Albon doesn't beat Latifi, his career's over. Like, that would look so bad, and he's absolutely wiped the floor with him. So fair play, Alex Albon. He's had a good year, but we'll see how he gets alongside Logan Sargent, and if he's wiping the floor with him as well, then maybe he deserves a better seat.
We'll have to wait and see, won't we? Ooh, the next chronicle of Alex Albon. P11 now then. Valtteri Bottas. So just missing out on the top 10 is the other Alfa Romeo driver. He managed 0 Fs, 0 Es, 4 Ds, 7 Cs, 7 B, 3 A, and 1 A star. This man was well on his way to a top 6 probably through the midway point of the season, with how well Alfa Romeo started. Very sort of Haas-esque, it has to be said, and Bottas was beating the Mercedes in the first few races, and we were like, what a move from Bottas. Mercedes are washed. Bottas has gone to a better team. Obviously it didn't end up that way, but he had a very much a season of two halves, did Valtteri. Obviously with his new haircut that he's rocking now. Which,
I think that looks so cool.
I think he deserves a few extra points, to be honest with you.
Let's make him first.
He saved the off season with that bit of content. But yeah, I think it was pretty impressive. He did kind of go off the boil in the second half of the season. And that's why he's finished 11th. I felt like he probably maybe deserved a top 10 spot, considering how good he was at the start. But unfortunately for him, Alfa Romeo just tailed off, and he wasn't able to do the performances that we know he can do. But also he wasn't smashing Zhou Guanyu either. Like, he wasn't completely obliterating him in terms of qualifying the race. So I think it was a bit of driver and a bit of car as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is definitely a tale of two halves, or maybe 1/3 and 2/3.
3/3.
Yeah, because first third of the season, you'd have probably put him 5th or 6th best driver. And
let's not forget Mexico. Don't know what happened there. Don't know why he was an absolute god around Mexico, especially in qualifying.
It's because I predicted it.
He did ruin himself in the race, though, which was a shame, which didn't allow him to give him an A star. But he was unreal in qualifying. Yes, Katie, you can take the plaudits for that. Well done.
And even in the A star, I'm sorry to mention it, but Bottas still just lacks that wheel-to-wheel thing. And I think I was one that argued that he shouldn't have got an A star at Imola because he was all over the back of George Russell's car, was so much quicker. But the guy just does not like to overtake for whatever reason.
Leave him alone, Tommy. He's finished 11th.
He's had a good season, though.
Even top 10. Come on, chill out.
He's got nice hair now, so back off.
I know. He's had a good, solid season, but it'd be interesting to see next year how he does with a full season alongside Zhou Guanyu. Now they seem a bit closer in performance.
It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, there's not really much for me to add. Like you guys said, it's a shame that his car wasn't quite at the level that he was performing at some points, and reliability issues seeming to hamper him every other weekend, it felt like. So I don't think we got to see the full potential of what Valtteri could do this season. But I'd still say, yeah, it was a solid season, and it was always going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, I think, having left Mercedes. Obviously, apart from Matt, nobody else predicted Mercedes to sort of have the slump that they did. But little dance and just a little smug face.
This is my smug face.
Yeah, but no, a good season for Valtteri, I think.
Oh my good Lord, we have absolutely rocketed through. Tom with the £100 plus £25 gift aid, and we have finally entered Shui territory.
Who's put their name? Their donation name is Katie Duashui.
Yeah,
I don't think we even need to poll if someone donated £100. No, if someone donated £100 and said
that was $33. It wasn't £100.
Still, I think so.
No, let's do a poll.
Who
We've all done one.
does the shoey?
Come on, Katie.
Katie is doing the shoey! Yes! Here we go then. Ooh.
Hey, we like to drink.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, it needs to have a minute because it's just.
Have a minute
just
to
froth.
ferment. Like what's
No,
going?
it's just froth. I don't want to drink.
To be
froth.
fair, the quicker I drink it quick. Are you blowing it?
I'm trying to get rid of the bubbles. It's just going to be bubbles if I drink this now.
Exactly.
Good.
But
Come on. People have
Here we
donated
go then,
£1,600.
I'm going to take my glasses
Go on,
off because I did that
Katie.
last time and it helped. Right. In my
Here we
antlers as
go.
well.
In your antlers.
Thanks, chat. Keep donating. Oh, I got. Oh, it's all. Oh.
Doesn't smell good, does it?
Try and make a laugh. How many D's did London?
Oh, the antlers are coming off.
Katie,
Hello.
what's your...
Bloody hell. You pour
Oh, my
7
word.
litres of beer in there.
I know, Jesus
Woo.
Christ.
And if I
There we
just
go.
screamed at her, I'm sorry, chat. That was quite loud, probably for you. We almost.
Well
got-
done.
That's
That is
not
fair, man.
That
That is fair, man. Well done.
In 10th position, Sebastian Vettel. No Fs, 1E, 2Ds, 6 Cs, 3 Bs, 5 As, 3 A stars. That's quite a few great performances, but only P10 for Sebastian Vettel. Of course, his last season in Formula One. And I feel like some of the grades were absolutely because he was retiring as well. But he did have a few good moments. Baku, USA, Abu Dhabi, USA, of course, with that incredible last lap overtake on Kevin Magnussen. Abu Dhabi because he was retiring, but then he also did have a very good race and then got screwed so badly by the Aston Martin strategy, did he not? So yeah, Seb was, I think he had a decent season. I don't know, and I'm sorry, because a lot of people love Sebastian Vettel, whether he actually deserves to be in the top 10. Again, it's quite difficult to really know how well he was doing when you're up against an unmotivated Lance Stroll, who Lance did beat him quite a few times with this, Tommy, as you mentioned, the Lance just rocking up and finishing P8. To be fair, though, on the flip side, you have to say that Aston Martin did screw him over on strategy quite a lot. That is Sebastian Vettel. So it's hard to judge those kind of things because, you know, we aren't all eagle-eyed. Oh, Sebastian Vettel's had a bit of a bad strategy here because he's in the mid-pack. No one really knows what's going on there as much as at the front.
Vettel stands now.
Yeah, Vettel stands now will probably print out a sheet and send it to me about how he was screwed over in every race. But I don't think it was the greatest season ever for Vettel, but it certainly wasn't a bad one.
No, I think my love for Sebastian Vettel might have swayed this ever so slightly. And at least on this podcast, I can actually defend myself because when you did the mid-season driver review and you were basically putting the entire blame on me, I was defenseless. I couldn't comment on anything, but I will openly admit that I've probably influenced the fact that he's 10th and not lower than this. But yeah, I think, well, it's just Sebastian Vettel. There we go. That's my argument. But he has had some good races. Baku, I know that this isn't why we gave him an A star, but an amazing escape road little turnaround. Maybe that
This is
we
why
gave
he's
him an
10th.
A star. Yeah, exactly.
Spin 10, A star.
He did a 360.
Should have
It was
been first.
beautiful. And yeah, that last lap with K-Mag in Kota was just magic. So I'd give him 10 A stars just for that one race, even though that's not how the rules
Not
work.
biased.
No, I don't actually like Sebastian Vettel that much, truth be told. Gotcha.
Telling porkies.
I'm telling porkies. But yeah.
Ironically, yeah, we did the mid-season podcast, and I think he was like 12th or 13th, and we were like, how is he that high up? And obviously we were bantering with you, Katie, about you giving him grades. And then actually he's ended the season even higher because he's actually had a really good end to the season. He got his last few grades were A star, C, B, A star. So yeah, had a great end and found kind of as soon as he announced his retirement, he was putting in some really impressive performances and stuff.
8th,
so
6th, 8th, 14th, 11th, 10th.
Yeah,
The last 6 races, not bad.
Looking at, you mentioned like you probably wouldn't have put him in the top 10. I think, yeah, for me, it's close between, maybe Albon could have gone in there or Bottas or something like that. Yeah, it's a close one, but there's a big step up, in my opinion, to the next lot. I think it's closer between these guys. I think Vettel's probably, might maybe go down to or about 10th, I think is fairish. So yeah, good season, and just sad he's retiring.
P9, Esteban Ocon. 0 Fs, 0 Es, 2 Ds, 6 Cs, 8 Bs, 3 As, 3 A stars. Esteban Ocon. I feel like he was an unsung hero of this season, very quietly going about his job, picking up a lot of points, beat Fernando Alonso in the Drivers' Championship. Yes, Fernando had bad this, bad that, bad reliability, whatever. Yes, I get that. And realistically, on a level playing field, Fernando should have scored more points than Ocon. But I thought Esteban Ocon going up against, as Tommy reckons, the greatest of all time. I think Esteban had a very good season this year. And I think P9 maybe about just does it justice. But I think that he's had a few quiet races that maybe went under the radar as well.
Yeah, this is another guy that I think's had a really good season, and 9th maybe doesn't do it justice, but there are 8 drivers that have done better than him. But he's had a very, very good season. I think he's been. I agree. He's been very good this season. You look at his consistency, only 2 D grades, 3 A stars as well. I mean, his drive in Japan was absolutely sensational. I think that was one of the best performances of the entire season, I'd say. Really, really impressive. Esti Besti had a good year. And to beat Fernando Alonso, I know Alonso had like 600 car failures, but I think Ocon did. There were a lot of races, I think, where we'd go, Alonso, and this, I'm the first to be blinded by this. I'm like, Alonso's miles clear. He'd be 1,000 points clear of Ocon. But then you'll get to I think it was Hungary is a great example where Alonso was like doing really well in qualifying, and then Esti Besti just comes out of nowhere and puts in a great quali and does out qualify Alonso when Alonso's been doing extremely well. So Ocon, maybe a bit of an underrated driver, but next year we will see the best from him, in my opinion, when he annihilates Pierre Gasly. But I'll save that hot take for another time.
Exciting.
You can't say you're saving a hot take and then say the hot take out loud. But...
Yeah, he had 2 retirements this year, which is significantly fewer than what Fernando Alonso had. We'll take that. But every other result that he had where he didn't finish in the points, he was so close. He had an 11th place in the USA, 11th place in Monza, 12th in Monaco, which he was also, I don't think that was his best race, to be honest. That's when he was also with Lewis Hamilton, and they were doing a bit of argy-bargy, a bit of bumper cars around the streets of Monte Carlo, and then 14th at Imola. But aside from that, he consistently scored points in every single race. And it wasn't just like I'll get a 10th, I'll get a 9th. It was things like 6th, 7th. There was a couple of 8s in there, the 4th in Japan that Tommy mentioned. He's done a really good job this year, and he seems to do this every year, and nobody really pays much attention to it. He's such a good, secure pair of hands for your seat, unless you want beef with your teammate, then don't do it. But if you just want somebody, when they get into the car, who can just drive and get that car in the points, and also do it with a big smile on your face after you come out of the car, and also have a great nickname in Esti Besti and fully embrace that this season he has done, then Esteban Ocon is your guy. And yes, I love Esteban Ocon. Can you tell?
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Esti Besti.
You're trying to sound like a dog. You're trying to get come here, boy. Come on. Roll over. Right. Well done, Esteban Ocon, on a decent season. 8th place goes to Carlos Sainz. Ooh. He has graded 0 Fs, 1 E in Japan, 2 Ds, 3 Cs, 8 Bs, 6 As, 2 A stars in Monaco and France. Carlos Sainz, he didn't have a terrible season by any stretch. I think that we saw a lot of the Leclerc doubters were silenced quite quickly with the comparison in pace between Sainz and Leclerc. Towards the end of the year, Carlos picked it up. I would argue some of that is Leclerc just almost fading towards the end of the year. I mean, it must be quite difficult to have had such expectations for the year and potentially fighting for the Drivers' Championship to then have Verstappen run away with it. But that's not to take anything away from Sainz. He definitely picked up his performances right at the end, but not anywhere near good enough to challenge for a title. Sainz's year this year, that he was quite far off at a lot of places. But look, he said towards the end that he's kind of figured out the car and he's hoping to pick it up pretty much straight away next year. Whether that'll be the case, whether that's just F1 driver talk, we'll have to wait until the start of 2023. But I think 8th is definitely right for Carlos Sainz, despite, of course, him picking up a victory. But Silverstone was the worst P1 I think I've seen in a very long time in terms of
didn't get an A star for a win. That says it already, doesn't it?
His first win didn't get an A star for it. Like that's mad, isn't it? But yeah, still a decent-ish performance, but you're being compared to Leclerc, so that's why. And I guess as well, we haven't. I suppose throughout this season, we sort of saw signs as like a level playing field with Leclerc, right? And that's probably why some of his grades were a bit harsher. Whereas you look at maybe Perez and Verstappen as very much a number 1, number 2 sort of driver. Sainz was very much, beat Leclerc last year in the driver's title. So maybe that's why we're maybe a little bit more critical of him this year, is that we expected him to be a lot closer.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the start of Carlos's season, man had an absolute stinker. Like, if he wasn't having issues with like brake by wire in Baku, wherever it is, or like his engine blowing up in Austria, I know that's more middle of the season, he was in a gravel trap. Like Australia, got in the gravel trap. Spain, he went through a gravel trap but managed to come out the other side. Imola got tagged by Danny Rick, stuck in a gravel trap. Like, he just had the worst start to a season, I think, maybe of anybody on the grid. I don't know if you would agree with that, but luckily kind of turned it around, get that confidence back in the car, which we knew was extremely quick. So I guess that makes life a little bit easier if you can see what your teammate's doing. So you know that there must be performance in that Ferrari. So I think, considering the first couple of races, he's actually done quite well to salvage sort of 8th here, because if we were going with like first half of the season, I think it'd probably be a bit lower. But yeah, like you say, it's a real shame that his first win wasn't this amazing, like, headline first place. Yes, Silverstone was a big talking point for lots of other reasons, but you guys know that I love a real, like, not hero to zero or zero to hero story, but like, I love these moments where a driver's getting their first win, or you get an underdog that gets a really good result. And so normally for most drivers' first win, it's this big song and dance. It's a really lovely, wholesome moment. But for Carlos, I feel like that was kind of lost a bit, because the circumstances around him getting his first win weren't really too great. And like we said, there were so many other things going on during that race that sort of amazing story, I feel like, wasn't as good. I mean, the last first winners we've had were people like Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, who really were like not expected to get their first win. But yeah, and then I mean, Japan was his lowest result, but that was because he literally aquaplaned and was the only car to aquaplane, and you know, everybody's driving under the same conditions. So an unfortunate mistake from him there, but hopefully he can take what he's learned this season and come back and really take the fight to Charles next year, because I know that he's got it in him and he can.
No, I don't want that. Thank you very much. I will have Charles Leclerc dominate from next year. Thank you very much. I need it a lot. So, yeah.
Carlos, dare I say, has had the opposite season to Valtteri Bottas, where when the car was good, he was actually pretty terrible and had a bit of a nightmare. And then when the car sort of wasn't, you know, Leclerc was winning a lot, like races at the start, getting poles, things like that. And like you mentioned, Katie, like Sainz just ended up in the gravel trap all the time. And then when the car, you kind of saw Ferrari being sometimes even third best, definitely second best, Sainz was just finishing a lot more solid, where he was finishing, like one place behind Leclerc, beating him the odd time in qualifying and stuff like that. So for me, Carlos unfortunately didn't make the most of when the Ferrari was good. He said himself that it was painful for him that the first time he got a race-winning car in his career, and it was the car that he gelled with the least, that it's that adaptability that makes the great drivers great. So maybe next year science will be better, but I agree, 8th for me is where he deserves to be. It seems like 8th, that's quite harsh, but when you actually look at the top 7, they're not, they're just not, they've done a lot better than Sainz. So yeah, I think it's fair.
Agreed. Cool. Right, we now move to the top 7, and it is Lando Norris picking up that place. He had 0 Fs, 0 Es, 0 Ds, 6 Cs, 7 Bs, 6 As, and 3 A stars at Imola, Singapore, and the USA. It was definitely a season where he was just constantly picking up places no matter what. Like, he was just scoring and scoring and scoring, and sometimes having very boring races on his own. I mean, his results were pretty damn awesome. Of course, the only driver to pick up a podium outside the top 3. He only finished outside the points 3 times, had 2 retirements as well. But apart from that, finished 7th in the World Drivers' Championship, and just had a very good season, which, if it was perhaps any other year where there wasn't a massive chasm between the top 3 and the rest of the teams, he probably would have picked up a few more podiums as well. But that wasn't to be. McLaren were off the pace, but he made the most of a car that wasn't that great.
Yeah, this is a weird one because it's hard to argue because they're literally grades that we gave them. But if I was to actually do my list and ignore my own grades from the year, I would have put Lando probably 3rd or 4th overall. I think he's a little bit of a victim of his own brilliance, I'd say. This year he's been really good and really consistent. So when Lando finishes P7, we go, yeah, solid from Lando, B, or maybe sometimes an A. Whereas, Danny Rick finishes 7th, and it's like, because he's been absolutely washed and terrible, we're like, A or an A star, well done, Danny. Whereas we've kind of maybe underrated Lando a little bit. I'd say it depends how much you go on consistency, because I think if you went on consistency, Lando's, he's knocking on even 2nd best driver of the year. So because he's just been solid all the way through. Second. But I don't think that British bias. Yeah, consistency.
Fight me.
Consistency.
How many times did Lando Norris manage to put it in the wall when he was leading?
Savage. But I think this shows. This is a stat which will show you how close it is.
How many times has your favourite driver actually led a race, apart from when it's been chaos bowling?
Silence.
Anyway, carry on talking.
This shows how insanely close these next drivers are. That if you changed 2 of Lando's C grades to a B, he'd be 3rd.
That's how close it is.
That's how close it is between 7th and 3rd. All these drivers, I think, there's an argument of switching them around and different orders. It's insanely close. And I think Lando's been brilliant. The problem is it's just been really hard to grade him because his teammate has been absolutely awful. So is he completely outperforming the car? I think he's doing the best of it constantly, but I don't. It's hard to. Yeah, I guess that the hard thing is to give him really amazing grades, because it might be that the McLaren is the worthy of finishing 7th, and him just finishing 7th is all he can do. So he's already had one to grade, but his consistency has been fantastic, and I hope to see him in a race-winning car one day, because I think he's got what it takes to be one of the best. But like I've said so many times, that's not a McLaren. Sorry.
If I said that is it a silent assassin? or a sneaky assassin.
Silent.
Like,
You were right. You were
silent,
right
thank
first.
you.
Yep.
So I feel like Lando this year has been a silent assassin, because in 2021, you know, he was also putting in some amazing performances, but those performances were more sort of headline performances, like getting on the front row or nearly winning the Russian Grand Prix, sorry for the trauma, or like all these other things. And he's not been able to do that this year because the top three have been clear of McLaren. But like you say, he's sort of just been there consistently, getting all these big haul of points, putting himself best of the rest, which I've learned is not a phrase that the drivers like, because they're like, well, I'd rather just be best rather than of the rest. But it's true. It's a matter of fact. He's normally been in that 7th, 8th place or whatever, or it would be 7th because they wouldn't be in 8th place because somebody else would be best of the rest. But you know what I mean? Like from the top three, he's normally the one that's there, that's better than the Mercedes. I'm trying to say what am I trying to say? Oh my God, I've had one shoe in, my brain's gone to mush. But like, you know, he's the guy that's behind the Ferraris, the Mercedes and the Red Bull. Like
He's
he's doing all he can, and there's nothing, like, realistically, there's nothing else he can do. I mean, his Imola podium is underrated, the fact that he's the only midfield guy that's actually got there. But the sad reality is he could put in the absolute god tier best drive he's ever done and he'd finish 7th, or he'd put in a pretty good drive and finish 7th. That's just the reality of, unfortunately, the new regs and how the absolute chasm, like you said, Matt, between those top three teams versus everyone else.
And between race 11, Austria, and race 16, which was Monza, 5 of those races he finished 7th out of 6. So that just kind of shows you where he was rocking up most races. But then again, Nico Hulkenberg used to do that, and no one rates him. So what's the difference? Who knows? But yes, Lando Norris, very close to finishing a bit higher. And we now move to joint 4th. So we have 3 drivers, all with the same score over a course of a whole season. Sergio Perez, George Russell, and Fernando Alonso. So we are going to work out an order between the 3 of us. So we'll go through each of them. First and foremost, we'll go with George Russell. So he got 0 Fs, 1 E, which was Singapore, which was a god-awful race for him, 0 Ds, 2 Cs, 8 Bs, 10 As, 1 A star, which was at Brazil. George Russell, I'm absolutely putting 4th out of these 3. There's no two ways about it. I think that despite his consistency, despite, yes, he did have a few moments of him having a little crash-happy little period of time during the F1 season, around sort of COTA, just before that as well. His season was absolutely bloody awesome. Like, crikey, mate, kind of vibes. You know what I mean? Like, proper George Russell shocked, because he beat Lewis Hamilton over the course of a season. I don't care what Team LH throw at you in terms of the reasons why. Over the course of an entire season, George Russell, who rocked up into this team, yes, he's been a part of this team for ages and ages, but to drive a Mercedes and to beat Lewis Hamilton over the course of a season is not plauded enough, in my opinion. And I think George had an incredible season. He beat Lewis Hamilton pretty much toe-to-toe in Brazil. Yes, Lewis might have been covering and having some damage and whatever. George is, like, just for a second, we just have to appreciate what he's managed to do in the first year of him at Mercedes. Like, he has got a very bright future coming, and in my opinion is absolutely going to be a world champion after what I've seen this year.
Wow, some big claims. I think he has had a really strong season. Like you say, the car's not been there, and he's shown that he's mature enough to deal with the fact that the car's not going his way. Perhaps some other drivers on the grid might not be as level-headed and as calm as he has been, but maybe that's because in the back of his mind, he knows he signed a contract with Mercedes and they're not really going to put up with the fact that they are 3rd. They want to be at the front. So maybe he knows that better times are around the corner. But yeah, certainly, you know, got his maiden win this year. There have been a couple of races where he's been a bit iffy. I mean, we gave him an E for Singapore because that was just dreadful. Like, I know he started at the back. I think he started in the pit lane, if I remember correctly. But even then, like, trying to make his way through just wasn't it. You know, coming together with Mick and all these other kind of things wasn't his finest moment, but he wasn't alone in that race. And then, like you say, he got a bit of a reputation sort of midway through the season when people sort of put him down as a blame for that crazy Zhou crash that we saw in Silverstone, tapping Carlos Sainz and the pole sitter, taking him out of the race at COTA. Like, there have been lots of examples that people have sort of put together of him maybe getting away with the occasional bump and things like that through other drivers. But generally, I think it's been a good first season with Mercedes. I personally am not going to put him fourth, but I'll let you.
Wow.
Let you go with that, Tommy.
I mean, look, I just want to quickly add as well. I know I've praised him a lot, but the fact that he went on that run of top 5 finishes at the start of the year when Mercedes were not good at all, Hamilton was getting knocked out in Q1 in Saudi, etc. He had 9 top 5 finishes in a row with 3 podiums there. He finished in the top 5 19 times out of the 22 races that we had. That consistency is on another level, in my opinion. And I think that is, again, another reason. I mean, I would even maybe put him third. Genuinely, he's had an unreal season, and I'm a George Russell fanboy apparently now. Tom Bellingham, what do you have to say to the matter?
I agree that I think he's had. I'm surprised how under the radar George Russell beating Lewis Hamilton. And it's not just beating Hamilton in the season, because, yeah, there's always that argument of like, oh, Hamilton was using experimental flaws and stuff. At the end of the day, there were a few races at the end of the season where Mercedes probably could have got a victory. And the track where, I think we've mentioned this with Hamilton before, it was this year, to get a win, you essentially had to be on it in the very rare occasion that Verstappen made a mistake or was off. And at the end of the day, that race where that happened to Verstappen, George Russell was the one in the Merc that was ahead. You know, won the sprint, overtook Verstappen, won the sprint, started on pole from the sprint, and won the race and kept that Mercedes kind of win streak going that a lot of people thought was going to end this year. His consistency has been incredible. And I'd say maybe the Singapore thing gets a little bit too much heat because it was literally one race. I mean, looking at his grades, he didn't get a single D grade or an F grade. He got 1 E, 2 Cs, and then everything's a B or higher, 10 As. I think he's maybe not had, well, he hasn't. That's a fact, to quote one of his phrases, like that he's not had maybe those A-star performances, but the consistency has been absolutely amazing. And dare I say, it's consistency that wins you titles. And, if he's doing that when the Mercedes is good and just getting all the points he needs, he could challenge for a title. So yeah, I think George Russell has been sensational. And sorry, Katie, but I'd agree with you, Matt, that even though one of the other drivers is Fernando Alonso, who I obviously adore, I personally would put Russell fourth as well. British bias.
Okay. Well, British bias flowing. Our second driver is Fernando Alonso. He had 0 Fs, 0 Es, 1 D, which was from Miami, 5 Cs, 5 Bs, 9 As, and 2 A stars, which was the Netherlands and the USA. Fernando was doing things that you would not expect that a man of that age to be able to do in a Formula One car. There were a lot of what could have been. It's amazing how Ocon beat him in the championship, and we're talking about him being the 4th best joint driver of the season. But obviously that's due to how many crazy stuff that he had go on. Yeah, he was sensational, brilliant to watch. Canada sticking it on the front row. What could have happened in Australia qualifying? Of course, even what could have happened in the Canadian GP race, but his car then had a problem again, shock, and he couldn't go as quickly as he could, and maybe that could have been a podium for him then. But yeah, Alonso driving back from the USA crash with Stroll, and just brilliant to watch. And it kind of, yeah, you kind of wonder, with Fernando Alonso coming back to the sport, how will he actually perform? You look at what Michael Schumacher did and how much he struggled, as much as that pains me to say out loud. Fernando Alonso in a similar sort of scenario, although he did obviously drive the sort of hybrid McLaren Honda, so it's not the craziest switch for him. That's my Michael Schumacher defending right there. But Fernando's been unbelievable for that man to produce the performances he did. Straight up fire. Can't wait to see what he does next year. But he's gone to Aston Martin, which, yeah, we'll see how good Aston Martin are next year.
Yeah, I think Fernando Alonso, I'd say has had a very different season to George Russell, despite them ending up with exactly the same kind of points or average grade here. Because for me, Fernando Alonso, I wouldn't say he's been inconsistent, because he's been hard to grade because his car just has problems all the time. If you listen to our end of season podcast, I think you read something out on Reddit, Matt, that was like that list where I think there was about 14, 15 issues that he had during the season. Even if it wasn't simply breaking down from a race, there was always something that was going on. But for me, Fernando Alonso's had higher highs like that front row in Canada. I mean, no one in a midfield car did anything like that other than Lando's podium to break into that top, to displace any of those top three teams in any moment, even though it was a wet qualifying. But it went the distance. I know Magnussen got a pole, but that was kind of a very unique circumstance where the session ended early. It rained a lot. That qualifying session went the distance, and Fernando Alonso put it on the front row again. He was purple in a dry qualifying in Australia and potentially could have been on the front row again. It's absolute. I know what could have been, but it just shows that he's still got it. And for me, Fernando Alonso has been he's not been as consistent as someone like George Russell, where he will get the, he will be constantly like a Lando. If you want the consistency, you've got to look at someone like Lando, who's seventh, which you could say that this is what, Alpine should be doing. But for me, Fernando Alonso had some amazing highs and just sort of cemented that thing, not just for me as an Alonso fanboy, but other people that maybe underrated him a little bit or thought, oh, he's past it, that give him a top car and he will still win races even at his age. Just an incredible season, really. And like you say, the fact that he's finished behind his teammate and he's joint fourth on the list is mad.
Yeah, it's so frustrating with this, because you're like, well, do you grade them as a driver and potentially look at where they would have finished? Because with Fernando, the car, as we've mentioned so many times, just kept failing on him when he was in those positions that would have made him consistent, like Lando Norris. So it's kind of tricky. Are we going to just go with how he would have finished had the car not broken, or are we going to include that with our overall
You're
grading
saying this
of
like
it?
we haven't already graded him actually.
I can't remember what I did yesterday, let alone like earlier this season, how we graded them. So, but yeah, for me, Fernando, he's been able to put himself up the front in a car that is definitely not deserving to be there. He's old. He also gets extra points for his sassy radio messages. I absolutely adore them. They make my day. And if I was to grade, I'd put him. It is. And for those reasons, that's why I would. This is going to go down so badly, but I'd maybe put him above George Russell, because although the Mercedes was still, not as competitive as normal, I don't think he had the chance to show the consistency that we know he could have had. So
it's really hard to grade. It's really
difficult.
It's really difficult when you're like. The problem is we've got this situation because of the new rules. Hopefully it closes up, where essentially like it's almost the opposite to Lando. Whereas I personally still would put George Russell fourth. It sounds like I'm going back on my own argument, but him consistently being in the top five is like realistically he's only ever going to finish sixth anyway. But I think what Russell did at the start of the year was, he was beating like the likes of Sainz and getting that win. But it is like grading people in two different sports, because you've got Fernando Alonso, who's driving a car that is breaking down all the time and can't really do anything, against George Russell, who is in the third best car and sort of being a bit consistent. So
George didn't have any mechanical retirements this year, did he? He nearly did in Brazil, but he didn't actually have a mechanical retirement.
Mercedes was weirdly to say they had all those issues, they were very sort of bulletproof with reliability, weren't they? £2,002.
Oh no.
100%.
So what are we
Right, chat.
Thank you, everyone.
Chat, what are we doing? Is everyone doing one, or is it a targeted shoey? You decide.
Some cushions and I keep falling down because I'm too
Either say
Okay.
in the chat now, all or targeted.
All.
Oh yeah, polls exist.
Yeah. Well done.
Sorry.
Are we ready?
Cheers, gents.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I can't drink it when you're making that noise.
I was about to say that the noise you were making was far worse than the actual experience of the shoe.
Oh my god, guys, it's coming through my shoe. It's seeping through. Shut up. I need some water. That was freaking vile.
And the final fourth position is Sergio Perez, who had 0 Fs, 0 Es, 1 D in Canada, 5 Cs, 5 Bs, 8 As, 3 A stars in Saudi, Monaco, and Singapore. Yeah, Sergio Perez for me probably would be 6th if we were to take them away from each other and not be drawing. He had an amazing start to the season, and we were wondering, oh, is he a championship contender? And then his car did not suit his driving style anymore for whatever reason. You can decide. But yeah, Sergio still had a really good season. And I think he can be happy with what he achieved, definitely. But yeah, I would put Alonso and Russell above, and maybe that's because, again, you're working with expectations here. Like for me, Russell, you're expecting him to be beaten by Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, 41 years old in an Alpine, but he's doing amazing stuff. Sergio Perez is in the Red Bull, which won the World Championship, and so there's of course going to be a level there where the grades and maybe your opinion is skewed. So for me, Sergio finishes the bottom of the 4th runners in P6.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I still think it's been Sergio's best year to date. We mentioned that, his A stars came at Saudi, Monaco, and Singapore, all places which he didn't win the race in Saudi. He got pole in Saudi, his first ever pole position, but it wasn't to be. That fake call for a pit stop from Leclerc caught out Perez. He pitted. Then there was it a safety car afterwards or something? And basically he got screwed over, and I'm still not over it, but it's okay. So yeah, he certainly had a much better season than I think he has previously. But like you say, with Max Verstappen as your teammate and a car that we saw potential with Sergio and that Red Bull at the start of the season, but it's just not really continued over the majority of the year. Like, I'm more than happy that he's had races where he's really shone bright and that Max hasn't actually been able to match him. And that's, I really like races like that. But I just don't think it was enough considering how competitive that Red Bull was. He should be doing that more. So yeah, I think I'd probably put him behind Alonso and Russell in this.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know how you can put Sergio anything other than 6th in my opinion, because I worry that Checo is one of those drivers where maybe, I think you mentioned this earlier with Sainz, Matt, that if you kind of expect him to be behind Verstappen, so if Checo finishes 2nd, he gets an A, whereas Max finishes 2nd, we're like, oh, he should have won the race. It's probably a B, maybe an A, and maybe like Checo gets a better grade when he's sort of finishing behind Verstappen, because that's where you kind of expect him to be. And realistically, that is kind of the job that most people believe, whether Red Bull would admit it or not, that he's been bought to do, to be a solid number 2 to Verstappen. And I think more than ever, it's helped that the car has been very good. But more than ever, he has been a more consistent driver that's picked up the points. I think for me, if he'd got P2 in the title, which I think he should have done in that car, especially how good Red Bull were at the end of the season, maybe he'd go to 4th.
Number 2 and then a thinking face.
God's sake. But yeah, he then maybe we're putting him 4th and going, well, he did everything that he needed to do. Finish 2nd in the title, make sure that Red Bull win the constructors by a country mile. But you do have to look at, no matter how good he's been, he finished 149 points behind his teammate. But then his teammate,
but he would have finished second in the title. Tommy had
had he let him
out.
through. But then his teammate is Max Verstappen, so that kind of it's a different argument, isn't it? So, a good solid year for Checo, but I'd put him sixth. I'd go Russell, then Fernando, then Checo. But then if I was to redo the grades, I might even put Lando ahead of Russell.
Wow. Okay. Intriguing stuff. Thank you, Tommy. The first driver on the podium, P3, is Lewis Hamilton. 0 Fs, 1 E in Spa, 3 Ds, 1 C, 3 Bs, 10 As, 4 A stars for Spain, France, Hungary, and the USA. Yeah, intriguing, isn't it, Hamilton? Getting better grades and than George Russell. A lot of A stars, which have helped pretty much push him over the edge of the tied fourth place shenanigans that's going on. I mean, when you look at it on the face of it, from the results, he got beaten in the Drivers' Championship. Yes, there's talk of him running experimental setups and things like that to try and help the team. And, you know, that's talk, isn't it? We know that Toto isn't afraid to massage Lewis Hamilton's ego as well if things aren't going right. Coming over the team radio, yeah, I know the car's an S box, etc., etc. We'll be back. You know, all this sort of stuff. Mercedes know how to try and keep their drivers happy, especially Lewis Hamilton, who is the most successful driver of all time. I am inclined to say that I think George Russell should be third and Lewis Hamilton should be fourth. Hamilton has had some amazing results and some brilliant drives. But I don't know. We're again talking about expectations and what Hamilton should be doing and what George Russell should be doing realistically in his first season at Mercedes. And yeah, I think if I was to move it around, and I'm sure there isn't much between the joint fourth place drivers and then Hamilton in third, but if I was to rate it now, I would probably put George ahead of Lewis.
Yeah, this is how close it is. So on Tune Fix's graphic that we'll link to in the description and stuff, we did this where an A star is worth 6 points, A5, B4, etc., etc. When you turn that into a championship's points tally, you've got Lewis Hamilton third on 96 points, then Perez on 95 points, Alonso on 95 points, George Russell on 95 points, and Lando on 94. So those drivers, it is literally one or two grades. Well, one grade, a couple, could completely change it. Like Hamilton could have easily been seventh as much as he was third. It is that close between these drivers. And I think there'll be a lot of debate between these 5 drivers of who should be where. So Hamilton's season, I think, was different to Russell's in that Russell was more consistent. However, did get that win when it mattered, which I think is a plus for Russell. Hamilton had more kind of standout races where you'd think that, wow, his performances in his A stars of Spain, France, Hungary, and COTA were really good, really, really good. They were just all races where Max Verstappen was really, really good. And all of those A stars was Hamilton finishing second to Verstappen. Those performances, he was beating Ferraris, which were better. He was beating Sergio Perez in a better Red Bull. But Hamilton's great races came on days where Max was also very good, so he didn't carry on that win record. So, it's a really difficult one.
Apart from Spain, by the way, that he didn't finish second in Spain, but he came from last and 30 seconds behind the back.
That was
the
K-Mag contact,
fifth.
right?
Yeah,
with K-Mag, and then came back and had unbelievable pace. And I think we were all saying, could Hamilton have won that race or at least finished maybe second or third? And that was when the Mercedes wasn't doing particularly good. So, for me, I think Hamilton. I would put Hamilton ahead of Russell, but it is so marginal. It's so marginal, and I can totally see either way.
Yeah, I mean, we look at Lewis Hamilton's season, and for a lot of people, they'll probably either see it as the season where he was Mercedes' guinea pig, and you know, they were putting all these parts on his car and slowing him down and testing all this, and he was proved himself to be a real team player. Not that we didn't think he was beforehand, but we've seen it even more so far this season. But also, yeah, the season where he didn't get that win, but strip that back and take that away, just like generally looking at his season so far, it was a kind of a similar story, I guess, like we had with George, is that you'd have a look at how the standings were of after the race or the classification, and you'd be like, oh yeah, like Hamilton's managed to get another really good, like, get on the podium. He had so many races where he was on the podium in a row and things, and that's just testament of, you know, his abilities and his skill, that although he didn't get that prized first place this year, he's still been super consistent getting those results. And I guess that's why we've put him into third. Like you say, looking back at putting them all into order like this and going through them, there's probably going to be, even though we've put them in this order, like reasons why we want to change things here and there, but he's just done a really solid job. And I'm sure all the data and stuff that he's collected as well over the season, just as George has, will be a huge benefit to Mercedes. And yeah, I don't know, like we've seen up until now, there have been some drivers that maybe haven't had that amazing standout performance, but they've still been at the front. And we're so used to seeing them at the front that we kind of don't really highlight the fact that they've consistently had these really, really good performances. This, once again, this shoey juice is really getting to me. I feel like I'm just waffling, but you get my.
How much did you put in your shoey? Yeah, I think Hungary for me is the standout race for Hamilton, where in that race for me, Verstappen and Hamilton showed just how good they both are, and we've seen moments from Hamilton this year where we've gone, the Mercedes are up there, Hamilton is challenging for the championship again, and would take it to the fight to Max again. So yeah, I don't think I've ever witnessed, we've done ABCDF1 for a long time now, and I don't remember as ever being sort of a five drivers that are pretty much almost equal, and it is really hard. So a lot of people will probably go, oh, it's absolutely outrageous that Lando's 7th. That sounds ridiculous, because they'll put Lewis Hamilton 7th and put Lando 3rd. But realistically, they're all very close and really hard to pick between.
Can you imagine the devastation if we put Hamilton as the 7th best driver this year? What would happen on social media?
Oh, we'd be cancelled.
Finished.
Yeah, we'd be.
Instead, we'll be cancelled by.
Reaction at all? I don't know what you're on about.
Lando Norris fans instead will be angry. Either or, we now move on to the runner-up, and of course, it is the vice champion Charles Leclerc. He finished with 1F France, which, to be fair, is the only F in the top.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
15.
Latifi.
Lance Stroll, 16th, was the only other driver to get an F between him and Charles Leclerc. And I mean, yeah.
The only drivers to get Fs, were Latifi obviously got 8 of them. Daniel Ricciardo got 2 of them. Lance Stroll got 1. And then the only other one was Leclerc. But I think we were very brutal, but I think fairly for that error.
Very, very upset. So yeah, 1 F, 0 E's, 0 D's, 2 C's, 5 B's, 8 A's, 6 A stars. Yeah, I mean, look, he had an amazing season. He did what he could in that Ferrari. Sometimes he outperformed it, especially in qualifying. But I think that's where the Ferrari was strong, because of the way in which the tyre wear played out in the races. That was where they kind of fell short quite a lot of the time. Of course, there is this whole, name a more iconic duo than Charles Leclerc pole and Max Verstappen win, and that's what happened throughout most of the season. We did a video with him in Dubai, and we were playing a game, and we mentioned tyre degradation, and he said, way to sum up my whole 2022 season, or something to that regard. So the Ferrari unfortunately just wasn't good enough in the race pace, but Leclerc was so clear of everyone else. Verstappen and Leclerc, if it wasn't for Charles Leclerc, it would have been even more of a boring season. Can you imagine what it would have been like if we had someone maybe performing at the same level of as Sainz? Verstappen would have walked almost the entire season. So, yeah, a very deserving P2. I don't think he deserves any lower or higher than that. And that is coming from a passionate, not a fanboy, whatever person.
Yeah, that's Shuey juice is really affecting us all now. Yeah, I think coming into this season, like this is probably the first chance, definitely the first chance that Charles has had to really fight for a championship. And we saw quite early on into his campaign was Imola, and he made that small but still very costly mistake. And myself included, but other fans were like, you know, he needs to iron out these mistakes if he ever wants to win a world championship. Then obviously we got to France as well and we saw it happen. But I think the one thing that 2022 has taught me about Leclerc is that like there's never going to be a stage where he's going to grow out of it. Like I thought maybe it was going to be a thing that he just have to learn to not do. But I think we've seen that that's never going to be how he drives. And actually that's a really exciting thing. At first I was like, that's his biggest weakness, but perhaps actually he can use that into a strength, in that he's always on the limit 100% of the time, and maybe in 90% of the instances it's going to be amazing. Like this is why he's got so many pole positions. The man is insanely quick, and that's a real strength of his. But perhaps he'll just be on the limit, and like I say, one time out of 10, yes, that's correct, that is 10%, it won't work, and he might make a mistake, hopefully not one as costly as we saw in France. But for lots of people, maybe yourself included, Matt, it might be a bit of a tricky watch if you're watching him and thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to bin it at any moment, which sometimes I get when I watch Leclerc's onboards. But it certainly doesn't not deliver excitement when you watch him drive. And yeah, I think that's probably my biggest takeaway from this year on him. He did a really, he gave it a good fight. I think we kind of got to halfway through the season, we were like, he put up a good fight, but Max ultimately was just the better and had the better car and the better strategy team and all this kind of stuff. But I think Charles should be really proud of his season. And I'm sure it won't be the last time we see him fighting for a championship. Hopefully we get it as soon as next year.
I think just on the comment about his driving style and always been on the limit and sometimes crashing, I think the reason in which he had to drive that way is because of Max Verstappen and the level of which Red Bull were putting out week in, week out. If Ferrari have a car that is half a second clear of everyone else, I don't foresee Leclerc driving like that, because he'll have something in the locker.
We've seen it in previous seasons, though. Like, there's not really.
But
he's
never had a car that's been dominant, though, right?
No,
it's
but
quite
he's
easy
always
to
made
have
little mistakes here and there, even when he wasn't fighting Max Verstappen for a title. I think it's just how he drives the car.
I'm going to sound like a Charles Leclerc fanboy here, so excuse me. I know Matt won't.
We'll savour this.
I personally think that the Charles Leclerc is really inconsistent and makes loads of mistakes is a massive myth in his career. I mean, I look at the season he's had, and I look at our ABCD F1 grades, and for me, like, he's made a catastrophic error in France, which is unforgivable. We gave him the F, but realistically, he's got 2 C's and then everything else is a B and above. So I personally don't really understand why he gets so beat up for maybe a slightly small error that is not the France one was massive. Imola, like, I think this is probably coming from a Verstappen fan that had to watch Verstappen in 2018 bin it in about 7 races in a row, because he is essentially racing against Mercedes that is unbeatable, and watching Hamilton and Bottas and Rosberg and whatever drive around, and if they have the worst race of their career, they're finishing second. And I think that's when you overdrive a car. So I have a bit of sympathy for Charles Leclerc there as a Max fan, because I've seen it happen to Max, where you're in that part of your career where you've got a car that can't get anywhere near the front runners. Well, not anywhere near, but, you know, Leclerc's the one that's actually taken it to Verstappen, but the car's better. And then when we've seen the Ferrari is as good as the Red Bull. I think Leclerc's drove brilliantly. Bahrain is a great example. His overtake on Verstappen, again, pains me to say, was absolutely sensational at Austria. So for me, I think that I think Formula One it's a weird spot. Like look at like Hamilton. We didn't actually mention this with Hamilton, but Hamilton has made he made a mistake at Spa with Alonso. Big error, crashed on the first lap. And I don't think Hamilton's an inconsistent driver. It's just that he's trying to get everything out of the car and making a mistake. He did the same at Singapore. So, yeah, I'm sounding like a Leclerc fanboy that's trying to defend him massively. But I personally think it's a bit of a myth that he's this really inconsistent driver, because you look at his grades and actually no Ds, no Es, 2 Cs, 5 Bs, 6 A stars and 8 As. Like, there's 2 mistakes all season, which I don't think is fair to like really go in on, when someone like Sainz, for example, made about 10 errors at the start of the season.
But that's why we're not obviously putting him in World Championship. Quality at this stage for Sainz. But when you actually look at Leclerc's season, I'm not going to go into it in full detail because it pains me. But first, second, first in the first 3 races, and you got the Emilia Romagna, which he did make a mistake. He was pushing too hard, and that fits in with Katie's thoughts around that. But then you got Spain, he retired, so he blew up. Monaco was screwed over. Azerbaijan blew up. Canada had to start at the back. I think he did. Silverstone, pretty sure he had a.
Why didn't they?
He got screwed over with the hard tires. France, obviously big crash. So that's 2 big errors, I'd say. And then you got Hungary screwed over by Ferrari. Belgium, he had to start at 15th or something. Then you got podium. Mexico City, a bit rubbish, to be honest. He didn't drive very good, and Sainz beat him. Then you got Brazil, which again Ferrari were just nowhere. And then it's the end of the season, it's Abu Dhabi, and he finished second. So, what would you like to say back to that, Katie? I mean, Tommy's gone in on Charles Leclerc being a consistent man. You still.
I didn't say he wasn't consistent. I just said that I think we've got to come to terms with the fact that sometimes his driving style is that he does push too hard, and sometimes that can result in a mistake or 2. But hey ho, like that's how half the drivers on the grid drive. Ho ho ho, Merry Christmas. Right. But yeah, that's a driving style of a lot of drivers on the grid, ones that we've even talked about today. So I think it's just how he drives. But like looking back at certain moments of his, like that whole crashing into the castle section in Baku and the whole I am stupid and all that kind of stuff, I thought maybe that would be like, oh, he's new into F1, all this kind of stuff. But I think that's just how he is, and I love him for it. I think I'd so much rather watch a driver who just pushes it to the limit 100% of the time, and sometimes it's like that win it or bin it mentality. I'm not saying he bins it all the time, but I find that much more interesting than somebody who will just tootle along and never make mistakes.
Katie would have loved Jacques Villeneuve back in the day. Is that's basically it, right? I mean, to be fair, Max Verstappen, as Tommy said, was much worse. But then again, he was 17 and very much learning on the job as he was driving around. But as we move on to P1, and that is, of course, Max Verstappen, who scored 0 Fs, 0 Es, 1 D for Singapore, 1 C, 1 B, 7 As, and 12 A stars. Cool. That's the end of the podcast. Well. Thank you so much.
That's it.
Thank you so much for listening. Look, what more is there to say? Verstappen was in another level. He managed to bounce back from a steady start to the season in some of the Grand Prix. We're looking at Perez, as we said, suiting the car slightly better, but then he got into a stride, stretched his legs, and that is that, really. I mean, I don't really know what to say apart from Verstappen is an absolute force to be reckoned with. And I hope for the casual viewer, he doesn't have a car like that for every single year for the next 10 years. Otherwise, we could be seeing a lot of records going.
Yeah, absolutely. It was that season where we said, I think we even said this in 2020, that give Verstappen a championship winning car and it's scary how good he was in 2020 when the Red Bull was nowhere near, and then in 2021 when it was probably, it was close between Mercedes and Red Bull and kind of changed what was the best car. But I mean, the scary thing as well was at the start of the year, the car wasn't really suited to him. Yeah, he was still either finishing second or first in all the races, and then as soon
DNFs as well,
or DNFs when the car broke down. But as soon as the car got to his liking, from pretty much, I guess, Azerbaijan onwards, even though was he leading the championship at that point, or probably because of Leclerc's failures? But still, as soon as he got the car behind him, it was just like it was only ever an issue that stopped him winning a race. And that is very scary for everyone else on the grid because his errors were few and far between. Singapore was his only D grade, which was obviously that race where he had the issue in qualifying, which meant he was always playing catch up, and as caught out Lewis Hamilton and a lot of other drivers in that race. Singapore was a weird one where the second you went offline, it was one of those awkward wet races where it was really hard to overtake, and as soon as you go offline, you just skid off the circuit. And yeah, he made that massive lockup, trying to make it through the field, and that was probably the old Max Verstappen that we saw. Whereas we've had a lot more of the calculated stuff. I've said this already when we did our season review, but yeah, he's much more calculated from that old Max, where now he's got a dominant car. He knows he needs to pace himself and not go for a dive bomb from 14th at Spa, because he knows that he'll just be able to breeze past loads of cars in the DRS. And Spa is one of those examples that we'll look back on one day and go, how on earth did he just make the easiest win ever from 14th on the grid, and he was behind his teammate who was in the same car within about 4 laps. It's just mental.
Spa, Hungary, you name it, doesn't matter where he qualified or what power unit problems he had, he would just rock up and win, and it just became very much an inevitable feeling about Verstappen and that relationship he had with that Red Bull car is an absolutely stunning just execution of this championship. Just ran away with it. Thanks so much. See you next year. It was, and that combination of a championship winning car and Verstappen, I don't think can be beaten. Even with Leclerc and Ferrari sorting their antics out, they wouldn't have got anywhere close because their car wasn't good enough. And even then, even in equal cars, Verstappen beats Leclerc. It just is the case.
We're gonna swap of fanboys today.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much for me to add on top of what you guys have said. There's one word that always comes back when talking about Max Verstappen's season, and that is just inevitable. Like you say, whether he's coming from 14th or 7th or wherever it may be on the grid, first, second, like he's pretty much guaranteed to win the race. Like fans know it, drivers know it, listening to some of the drivers speaking after Saturday qualifying in Spa, they're all saying, oh, well, Max will probably pass me by lap 2 and all this kind of thing. Like, it's just seems to be fact now that he will somehow make his way up to the front and win the race unless his car is damaged or he's been dealt a really unfortunate set of cards, but just a sensational season. And like Tommy said, this will be one of those, I'm sure, that in a couple of decades time, people will look back, or maybe even sooner than that, and just say, well, this was a season and this guy was just on another level. So congratulations, Max. There was no one else that was going to be top of this list.
Well, actually, no, there is someone top of this list with 22 A stars. It's Tommy's child, Grace, who ruined the entire World Championship with the use of her onesies. So thank you so much. Well, you know what? We're not going to be horrible to Grace. We're going to be horrible to her dad, who decided to use the Verstappen onesie far too much.
Where this is going.
I think she's. I think she deserves like whatever the equivalent of a knighthood in the Netherlands is for her contribution to Formula One.
Waffle.
A lifetime contribution at 8 months. Well done, Grace. Amazing stuff.
I thought you were going to say, when you mentioned about there was someone that was first, Nick De Vries, if you go on average, did one race and got 1 A star. So
what about Hulkenberg? Where did he average?
He got 2 Cs. So,
okay,
so
sorry,
he was
brilliant.
17th.
Should just stayed at home, really. So
Yeah.
yeah, well done, Nick de Vries, for winning the average. That is that's quite an achievement. Of course, he'll be on the grid next year, so we'll be able to see if he'll get 23 A stars. We will see.
We'll
Can he
find
keep
out.
up that average? Tommy, final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, I hope you enjoyed that very long season
Yeah,
review.
Looking forward to next season.
Yeah,
It's been a long podcast. Tommy is running out of battery.
I know. And just this season. Yeah, I don't know what more to add. We've done our season review. It's been a great season as a Verstappen fan, and yeah, best driver one. Just got to get some fanboy in there because I've been too much of a Leclerc
too nice about
fanboy.
Leclerc. Fair enough. Katie?
So I think you said my headphones have died, so I can't actually hear a single thing that you're saying. But my final thoughts are, I had one and it's gone because I got.
I love Esty Bestie.
I can see your mouth is moving, but I don't know what you're saying.
Oh, I'm Katie. I'm washed.
My final thoughts are, I feel sick after all these shoeies. So there we go.
But it's been a good reason because we've been raising money for Blood Cancer UK. So many thanks to everyone that's donated in the Twitch chat. If you want to donate further later, whenever this podcast goes out, you can find the link everywhere, I'm sure. It's on Just Giving, WTF1 on there, but we will post the links where we can in whichever platform you are listening and watching. So that is it. The longest podcast we've ever done by an absolute substantial margin. Katie has no idea what I'm saying at this point. So that's quite funny, actually, that she's just kind of sitting there sort of, oh, what's Matt saying? Oh, look at this. Oh, I'm washed. Oh, yeah, I wear reindeer antlers. I'm so Christmassy. So yeah, there you go. Tommy's muted as well. So it's literally just
the
talking.
nervous look in Katie's face is priceless right now.
Oh, it's amazing. So thank you everybody for watching and listening to this podcast. And thank you so much for the support over the course of the whole year.
I literally have no idea what you're saying.
Amazing time bringing you this podcast. So thank you.
I'm scared.
I'm hiccuping now. Thank you so much for tuning into all of our podcasts. Hashtag WTF1 podcast if you want to get involved in the discussion. Follow us on Twitch, WTF1 official, and we'll see you very soon for another podcast. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Wave,
Bye.
Katie. There we go. Well done.